How to Ignore Reality and Get Anything You Want Instantly. Written and published by voxfreads. Introduction. What if reality is not the thing stopping you? What if it is the thing you have been obeying? Without question. Most people live as if the world is in charge. They wait for signs. They wait for permission. They wait until circumstances feel right. And while they wait, nothing changes. This book begins with a different idea. Reality is not a command. It is a response. You are not here to fight the world. You are here to outgrow it. This audiobook is not about fantasy. It is not about pretending facts do not exist. And it is not about wishful thinking. It is about focus. It is about discipline. It is about learning how to stop reacting and start directing. When you ignore reality in the right way, reality adjusts to you. The purpose of this book is simple: to help you take control of your inner world, and by doing that, change the outer one faster than you thought possible. You will learn why most people stay stuck even when they work hard. You will understand why effort alone does not create results, and you will discover why clarity beats motivation every time. This is not a book about waiting. It is a book about deciding. Throughout these chapters, you will hear ideas that feel uncomfortable at first. That is normal. Growth always challenges what feels familiar. You may notice resistance. You may hear a voice telling you this sounds unrealistic. That voice is not your enemy. It is a habit. This audiobook will teach you how to loosen the grip of that habit, not through force, but through understanding. You will learn how to act before you feel ready, how to move without needing reassurance, and how to stay calm while others hesitate. You will not be asked to believe blindly. You will be asked to observe carefully, to notice patterns, to notice cause and effect. When your thoughts change, your actions change. When your actions change, your results follow. This book is designed for listening. Each idea builds on the last. Each chapter moves you forward without overload. You do not need to rush. You do not need to take notes. You only need to listen with attention. The goal is not instant miracles. The goal is instant alignment. When your thinking aligns with your actions, speed increases. When speed increases, confidence grows. And when confidence grows, reality responds. You will learn how to detach from outcomes while expecting success, how to stay steady when progress feels invisible, and how to become consistent without forcing yourself. This audiobook is for people who are tired of waiting, for people who sense there is more available to them, and for those who are ready to stop asking life for permission. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need approval. You need direction. As you listen, allow the ideas to settle. Let them work quietly. Change does not always announce itself. By the end of this book, you will not see reality the same way. You will see it as flexible, responsive, and far less powerful than you were taught to believe. This is where the shift begins. Not by fighting the world, but by refusing to be ruled by it. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Why reality is not what you think. Reality feels solid. It feels fixed. It feels like something you must obey. From the moment you wake up, reality speaks to you. It tells you what is possible. It tells you what is risky. It tells you what you should accept. Most people never question this voice. They assume reality is truth. They assume it is final. But reality is not what you think. What you call reality is often a collection of habits, old decisions, repeated reactions, shared beliefs passed from one person to another. Let us start with a simple story. Imagine two people standing in the same city. They see the same streets. They face the same economy. They live under the same rules. One feels trapped. The other feels opportunity everywhere. The city did not change. The people did. This is the first crack in the illusion of reality. Reality does not exist as a single experience. It exists as interpretation. Most of what you call reality is filtered through expectation. Expectation shapes attention. Attention shapes action. Action shapes outcome. This happens quietly. So quietly that most people never notice. A person grows up hearing phrases like "be realistic," "do not aim too high." People like us do not do that. Over time, those phrases stop sounding external. They become internal. That is when reality moves inside the mind. Consider a simple example. A child touches a hot surface once. Pain follows. The lesson is learned. That is useful. But now consider emotional lessons. A person speaks up and is ignored. Embarrassment follows. The mind records danger. Later opportunities appear. The mouth stays closed. Reality says this is not safe. But nothing is actually happening in the moment. The danger is remembered, not present. This is how reality is built. Not from facts alone, but from emotional memory. Most people believe reality is external. In truth, it is often internal and automatic. This matters because automatic reactions create predictable lives. If you always react the same way, you get the same result. If you get the same result, you call it reality. But it is not reality. It is repetition. Think about money. One person sees money as a tool. Another sees it as stress. Another sees it as something out of reach. The currency is the same. The meaning is not. Meaning shapes behavior. Behavior shapes results. Reality follows behavior. This chapter is not asking you to deny facts. Facts exist. Gravity exists. Time exists. Consequences exist. What does not exist is the idea that your current experience is the limit of what is possible. Most limits are inherited. They come from family, from culture, from early failure. At some point, those limits stop being questioned. That is when people confuse familiarity with truth. Let us talk about effort. Many people work hard and still feel stuck. They assume reality is unfair. They assume the system is broken. Sometimes it is, but often effort is being applied inside the same mental box. Working harder inside a small box does not create expansion. It creates exhaustion. Reality does not change because movement alone is not direction. Direction begins with perception. Here is an important shift. Reality responds more to consistency than intensity. A person who believes progress is possible moves differently. They notice options. They speak differently. They recover faster from setbacks. A person who believes progress is unlikely protects themselves. They hesitate. They delay. They wait for certainty. Reality reflects that posture. This is why two people can face the same setback. One adapts. The other retreats. Same event. Different reality. When you hear the phrase "ignore reality," it can sound reckless. It is not. Ignoring reality does not mean pretending problems do not exist. It means refusing to let current conditions define final outcomes. There is a difference. An athlete trains while injured in controlled ways. They do not deny the injury. They deny the idea that it ends their future. An entrepreneur launches after failure. They do not deny the loss. They deny the story that failure defines them. This is selective attention. Selective attention is power. Your mind cannot focus on everything at once. It must choose. Most people let fear choose for them. This book teaches you how to choose deliberately. The first step is understanding that reality is often delayed feedback. What you experience today is the result of past thinking and action. That means today is not a verdict. It is a message. Messages can be interpreted. They can be adjusted. If you treat reality as fixed, you freeze. If you treat it as feedback, you learn. Learning creates movement. Here is a practical exercise. Think about one area of your life that feels stuck. Do not judge it. Just observe it. Now ask a different question. What behavior is this situation rewarding? And what behavior is it discouraging? You may notice patterns. Avoidance. silence, overworking, waiting. Reality often rewards what is repeated, not what is intended. Once you see this, something changes. You stop arguing with circumstances. You start redesigning responses. This is the foundation of everything that follows. Reality is not your enemy, but it is not your authority either. It is a mirror that reflects consistency. In the chapters ahead, you will learn how to adjust what the mirror reflects, not through force, but through clarity. This chapter had one goal: to loosen the grip of the idea that reality is fixed, to show you that much of what feels solid is learned, and to remind you that learned patterns can be changed. You do not need to fight reality. You need to stop mistaking it for truth. Once you do that, movement becomes possible. And this is where the real work begins. Chapter 2. The silent rules that control your life. Every life runs on rules. Most people never notice them. These rules are not written. They are not announced. They are rarely questioned. Yet they quietly shape decisions, behavior, and outcomes every day. You may believe you are making free choices. In reality, many of those choices are guided by invisible agreements you made long ago. This chapter is about bringing those agreements into the light. Let us begin with a simple truth. Rules do not need permission to control you. They only need acceptance. Many of the most powerful rules entered your life before you had language to challenge them. They came through observation, through repetition, through emotional experiences that left a mark. A child watches how adults respond to risk. A teenager learns what behavior earns approval. An adult carries those lessons forward, often without review. Over time, these lessons harden into rules. Do not stand out. Do not fail publicly. Do not disappoint people. Do not want too much. No one may have said these exact words, but the message was clear, and once accepted, rules do not shout. They whisper. They whisper when you hesitate before speaking. They whisper when you delay a decision. They whisper when you lower your goals to feel safe. Consider this example. Two people are offered the same opportunity. A new role, a new project, a new direction. One leans forward, the other pulls back. The difference is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is the rules they live by. One rule says, growth is worth discomfort. The other says, safety comes first. These rules feel like common sense to the person who holds them. That is what makes them dangerous. Silent rules disguise themselves as logic. Let us talk about time. Many people live by the rule that there is still plenty of time, so they delay. They postpone. They wait for a better moment. Others live by a different rule. Time is limited, and direction matters. Same clock, different rule, different life. Now consider money. Some people follow the rule that money must be earned through struggle. Others follow the rule that money follows value. These rules shape choices. They shape risk tolerance. They shape learning habits. Reality responds to these choices, not the rule itself. But because the result repeats, the rule feels proven. This is how silent rules reinforce themselves. A rule shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcome. Outcome appears to confirm the rule. The loop continues. Most people never interrupt this loop. They say things like, this is just how life is. This is how people like me live. This is what always happens. These are not observations. They are rules speaking. Here is a key insight. Rules are not facts. They are interpretations that feel familiar. And familiarity feels like truth. Let us explore where rules come from. Some come from authority, parents, teachers, leaders. Some come from emotional moments, embarrassment, rejection, failure. Some come from repetition. What you see often starts to feel normal. None of these sources guarantee accuracy. They only guarantee influence. This matters because rules decide what you attempt before logic ever enters. By the time you are reasoning, the decision is often already made. That is why people say things like, "I just do not feel like that is for me." That sentence is a rule, not a fact. The most powerful rules often hide behind identity. I am not the type of person who does that. I have always been this way. That is just how I am. These statements feel honest, but they are often inherited limits. Identity-based rules are especially controlling, because they feel personal. Challenging them can feel like self-betrayal. This is why change feels uncomfortable, even when it is necessary. Now let us talk about social rules. Humans are social by nature. Belonging feels safe. Many rules exist to preserve acceptance. Do not upset the group. Do not challenge the norm. Do not outgrow your circle too quickly. These rules protect connection, but they can also limit expansion. At some point, growth requires friction. This does not mean abandoning people. It means questioning which rules still serve you. Here is an important distinction. Rules that once protected you may now restrict you. A rule that kept you safe as a child may keep you small as an adult. Outgrowing rules is not betrayal. It is maturity. So how do you begin to identify your silent rules? Start with patterns. Notice where you hesitate consistently. Notice what you avoid repeatedly. Notice what feels off limits without a clear reason. Ask simple questions. What would happen if I did the opposite? What am I assuming is true here? Who taught me that? You are not trying to break rules yet. You are simply making them visible. Visibility weakens control. Once a rule is seen, it can be evaluated. Does this rule create growth or protection? Does it expand options or reduce them? Does it reflect who I am now or who I used to be? This chapter is not about rebellion. It is about awareness. You cannot change rules you cannot see. And you cannot outgrow limits you mistake for reality. The goal is not to remove all rules. Rules provide structure. The goal is to choose them consciously. In the chapters ahead, you will learn how to replace silent rules with deliberate principles. Principles are chosen. Rules are inherited. When you live by principles, reality becomes flexible. When you live by silent rules, reality feels fixed. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that much of what controls your life does so quietly, and that silence can be broken by attention. Once the rules speak, you decide whether they stay, and that decision changes everything. Chapter 3. The moment you stop asking for permission. There is a moment that quietly changes everything. It does not come with applause. It does not arrive as a dramatic decision. It arrives when you stop waiting. Most people do not realize how often they ask for permission. They ask with words. They ask with silence. They ask by hesitation. They wait for approval before they act. They wait for certainty before they move. They wait for someone to confirm that they are allowed. This habit begins early. As children, permission keeps us safe. It teaches structure. It creates order. But what protects you early can restrain you later. Many adults still live as if someone else is in charge. They wait for a signal that never comes. They wait until they feel ready. They wait until conditions improve. They wait until someone notices their effort. This chapter is about the cost of waiting. Asking for permission is not always obvious. It often hides behind reasonable thoughts. I need more information. I should prepare a little longer. This is not the right time. These thoughts sound responsible, but they often mask fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of failure. Fear of stepping outside a familiar role. Consider a common situation. A person has an idea they believe in. They think about sharing it. They imagine how others might react. They rehearse explanations. They anticipate criticism. They wait for encouragement. Days pass. Then weeks. Then the idea fades. Nothing external stopped them. Permission was never granted because it was never claimed. Here is a hard truth. No one is coming to authorize your potential. People are busy managing their own uncertainty. They rarely notice yours. Those who move forward do not wait to feel confident. They build confidence by moving. This is the moment many people misunderstand. Confidence is not a prerequisite. It is a result. Waiting to feel ready is like waiting for strength before lifting weight. Strength comes from the lift. The same is true for direction. People who stop asking for permission share one trait. They accept responsibility for outcomes. When you ask for permission, you also hand over responsibility. If it fails, someone else approved it. If it succeeds, someone else allowed it. This keeps the ego safe, but it keeps progress slow. Taking ownership feels risky, but it is the only way forward. Let us look at a real-world example. Two employees have the same role. Both see a problem in the system. One says nothing. They wait for leadership to address it. The other takes initiative. They test a small improvement. They present results. The difference is not position. It is permission. One waited to be invited. The other invited themselves. Over time, reality responds differently to these two people. One becomes invisible. The other becomes trusted. Permission shapes identity. When you repeatedly ask for it, you reinforce the belief that authority lives outside you. When you stop asking, you begin to act from alignment instead of approval. This does not mean acting recklessly. It means acting deliberately. There is a difference between recklessness and self-authorization. Recklessness ignores consequences. Self-authorization accepts them. This chapter is about the second. You stop asking for permission when you accept that mistakes are part of movement. That clarity often comes after action. That feedback is better than silence. Many people fear being judged for acting. They forget they are already judged for not acting. Inaction has consequences too. They are just quieter. Opportunities expire. Skills stagnate. Confidence erodes. These costs rarely feel urgent. That is why they are dangerous. Here is an important shift. Permission is often a delay tactic, disguised as politeness. People say they are waiting out of respect. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for alignment. But alignment is not found. It is created. You create alignment by choosing direction, then adjusting as you go. This is how progress actually works. The moment you stop asking for permission is not aggressive. It is calm. It sounds like this. I will try. I will learn. I will adjust. No announcement required. You do not need everyone to agree. You do not need everyone to understand. You only need to move with integrity. This chapter is not encouraging rebellion. It is encouraging responsibility. Responsibility means owning your choices, even when they are imperfect. Especially when they are imperfect. Here is a simple practice. The next time you feel the urge to ask for reassurance, pause. Ask a different question. What is the smallest responsible action I can take right now? Not the perfect action. Not the final action. The smallest one. Action breaks the spell of hesitation. Once movement begins, feedback replaces fear. Reality becomes responsive again. You will still feel doubt. That does not disappear. But doubt no longer decides. Over time, something subtle changes. You begin to trust yourself. Not because you are always right, but because you know you can respond. This is freedom. Freedom is not the absence of risk. It is the presence of self-trust. When you stop asking for permission, your posture changes. Your voice changes. Your timing changes. People sense it. Reality responds to it. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that waiting is often a habit, not a requirement, and that permission is something you give yourself. The moment you stop asking is the moment momentum begins, and momentum changes everything. Chapter 4. Ignoring reality without losing control. The phrase "ignore reality" often creates confusion. Some hear it and think it means denial. Others think it means recklessness. It means neither. Ignoring reality without losing control is a skill. It is calm. It is deliberate. And it is disciplined. Most people lose control because they react too much to reality. They absorb every signal, every opinion, every temporary condition. They confuse awareness with obedience. This chapter is about learning the difference. Reality constantly sends information. Some of it is useful. Some of it is noise. Control comes from deciding what deserves your attention. Let us begin with an example. Imagine driving at night in heavy rain. If you stare at every raindrop on the windshield, you panic. If you ignore the road completely, you crash. Control comes from focusing on what matters: the road, the direction. The next clear point ahead. Life works the same way. Many people overload their attention. They track problems instead of progress. They replay setbacks instead of adjusting behavior. This does not make them realistic. It makes them reactive. Reacting feels responsible, but it often leads to exhaustion. Ignoring reality, in the right way, restores control. Here is the key idea. You ignore conclusions, not data. Data informs. Conclusions limit. For example, a business is losing customers. That is data. The conclusion might be, this will never work, or I am not cut out for this. Those conclusions are not facts. They are emotional interpretations. Ignoring reality means refusing to accept limiting conclusions as final truth. This distinction matters. High performers are not detached from reality. They are selective. They face facts. Then they decide meaning. Most people reverse this order. They feel discouraged first. Then they search for facts to justify it. That is how control is lost. Control is not about forcing optimism. It is about stabilizing perspective. Consider how pilots are trained. When instruments fail or conditions worsen, panic is the enemy. Pilots are taught to trust core indicators: altitude, speed, direction. They ignore distractions, not because distractions are unreal, but because they are not useful in that moment. Your life has core indicators too. Direction, consistency, effort applied with intention. When these are steady, temporary chaos matters less. Ignoring reality without losing control means anchoring yourself to what you can influence. You cannot control every outcome, but you can control your response. You can control your focus, your habits, your decisions. Many people believe they are being responsible by worrying. Worry feels active, but worry is passive attention. It consumes energy without producing movement. Ignoring reality means withdrawing energy from worry and redirecting it toward action. Let us look at another real-world example. An athlete is injured before an important event. The injury is real. Pain is real. One response is panic, anger, self-pity. Another response is adjustment. Training changes. Recovery becomes priority. Strategy shifts. Both responses acknowledge reality. Only one maintains control. The difference is not optimism. It is focus. One focuses on loss. The other focuses on adaptation. Ignoring reality does not mean pretending things are fine. It means refusing to let circumstances dictate identity. A setback is an event. It is not a verdict. Most people collapse these two. They experience difficulty and conclude something is wrong with them, with their timing, with their worth. This is how reality becomes heavy. Control is lost when identity becomes tied to conditions. Here is a powerful principle. You can ignore the emotional weight of reality while respecting its facts. Facts require response. Emotional weight requires choice. You choose how much importance to assign. This choice determines clarity. When you stop overreacting, you begin to see options. Options restore control. This chapter is also about patience. Ignoring reality often requires resisting urgency. Urgency pressures you to fix everything at once. It demands immediate resolution. But growth is often uneven. Some days move fast. Others feel stuck. People who lose control interpret slow days as failure. People who maintain control interpret them as part of rhythm. Rhythm matters more than speed. Speed without rhythm leads to burnout. Here is a simple mental shift. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "How should I respond to this?" The first question creates emotion. The second creates strategy. Strategy restores agency. Agency restores calm. This is not about emotional suppression. It is about emotional leadership. Emotions provide information. They do not provide direction. You acknowledge them. Then you decide. Ignoring reality without losing control also means letting go of comparison. Comparison distorts perception. It magnifies lack. It minimizes progress. Social comparison creates artificial urgency. It makes you feel behind even when you are aligned. Ignoring this version of reality protects focus. Your path does not need to look like someone else's to be valid. Control increases when comparison decreases. Here is a practical exercise. When something goes wrong, pause before reacting. Name the fact without interpretation. Say it plainly. This plan did not work. This conversation was uncomfortable. This result was slower than expected. Stop there. Do not add meaning yet. Then ask one question. What is the next useful action? Not the perfect one. The useful one. This keeps you in motion without emotional overload. Over time, this practice changes your relationship with reality. Reality stops feeling like pressure. It starts feeling like feedback. Feedback is manageable. Pressure is not. This chapter has one clear message. Ignoring reality does not mean losing control. Reacting blindly does. Control comes from selective attention, from grounded interpretation, from steady response. Reality is loud. Direction must be louder. When you choose what to listen to, you choose how you move. And when you move with intention, reality adjusts. That is control. Chapter 5. How the mind accepts what you repeatedly feed it. The mind is not logical by default. It is adaptive. It does not ask whether something is true. It asks whether something is familiar. What you repeatedly feed the mind becomes normal. What becomes normal becomes believable. And what becomes believable begins to guide your actions. This process happens quietly. Most people never notice it. They believe they are choosing their thoughts. In reality, many thoughts are habits. Habits formed through repetition. Think about how language is learned. A child hears the same words again and again. No explanation is required. Meaning forms through exposure. The mind works the same way with beliefs. If you repeatedly hear that something is difficult, the mind accepts difficulty as part of the experience. If you repeatedly tell yourself you are behind, the mind adjusts expectations downward. If you repeatedly focus on lack, the mind prepares for more of it. This is not weakness. It is design. The mind is efficient. It conserves energy by trusting patterns. Repetition creates patterns. Patterns create belief. Belief shapes behavior. Let us look at a common example. A person fails at something early in life. They think about it often. They replay it. They describe themselves through it. Over time, the mind stops questioning the story. It accepts it as identity. I am not good at this. This never works for me. I always mess things up. None of these statements are facts. But repetition gives them authority. The mind does not argue with what it hears often. It assumes consistency equals truth. This is why environment matters so much. What you hear daily becomes internal dialogue. What you see often becomes expectation. What you repeat becomes instruction. Most people feed their minds without intention. They scroll through negativity. They rehearse worst-case scenarios. They complain repeatedly about the same problems. Then they wonder why motivation feels low. Why confidence feels unstable. Why progress feels heavy. The input explains the output. This chapter is not about positive thinking. It is about accurate thinking. Positive thinking without discipline fades. Repetition with intention reshapes. Consider this. If you repeat fear-based thoughts 10 times a day, fear becomes familiar. And you repeat calm direction once a week, it has little influence. The mind follows volume and frequency. This is why anxiety grows when fed attention, and why confidence grows when fed evidence. Evidence does not need to be dramatic. Small wins repeated are powerful. Here is an important distinction. The mind believes what feels rehearsed, not what feels correct. You may logically know something is possible, but if you have never rehearsed it mentally, the mind resists it. This is why change feels uncomfortable. New thoughts feel foreign. Old thoughts feel safe. Safety is not truth. It is familiarity. People often mistake discomfort for danger, but discomfort is often a sign of growth. When you introduce new input, the mind pushes back, not because the input is wrong, but because it is new. This resistance is normal. The problem begins when people retreat at the first sign of resistance. They return to familiar thinking, and the old pattern strengthens. Repetition works both ways. What you starve weakens. What you feed grows. This includes attention. If you stop feeding a thought, it loses momentum. If you keep feeding it, it gains authority. This is why ignoring reality works only when paired with mental discipline. You cannot ignore reality externally, while feeding fear internally. The mind will default to what it knows best. Let us talk about self-talk. Self-talk is the most consistent input you receive. It is uninterrupted. It is private. It is repeated. Many people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to others. They criticize. They doubt. They predict failure. Over time, the mind accepts this tone as guidance. It adjusts posture. It adjusts energy. It adjusts effort. Action becomes cautious. Results follow caution. This reinforces the original belief. The loop continues. Breaking this loop does not require affirmations shouted into the mirror. It requires consistency and realism. Instead of saying everything will be easy, say I will stay steady. Instead of saying I am fearless, say I can act despite fear. These statements are believable. Believable thoughts are accepted faster. The mind resists exaggeration. It accepts direction. Here is a practical example. Someone starting a new path may repeat, "This will never work." That thought drains energy before action begins. Replace it with, "I am learning how this works." That single shift changes behavior. Learning invites patience. Failure becomes feedback. The mind relaxes. Control returns. This chapter is also about input beyond thoughts. Music influences mood. Conversations influence perspective. Content influences expectation. If you consume material that reinforces limitation, limitation feels normal. If you surround yourself with growth-oriented language, growth feels accessible. This does not mean avoiding reality. It means curating influence. You are not required to expose your mind to everything available. Selective input is not ignorance. It is leadership. Here is a simple daily practice. Notice one thought you repeat often. Do not judge it. Just notice. Ask one question. Is this thought useful for where I am going? If the answer is no, do not fight it. Replace it gently. Repeat the replacement more often. The mind does not need force. It needs frequency. Over time, new thoughts feel less foreign. They become familiar, then believable, then automatic. This is how identity shifts. Identity is not discovered. It is rehearsed. What you repeatedly feed the mind becomes the voice you follow. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that your mind is always learning. Even when you are not paying attention, you are feeding it every day, through words, through focus, through repetition. Once you realize this, Control increases. You stop feeding thoughts that weaken you. You begin feeding thoughts that stabilize you. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. And consistency is what the mind trusts most. In the next chapter, we will explore why action often needs to come before confidence, and how movement reshapes belief faster than thought alone. For now, remember this: the mind believes what it hears often. Make sure it is hearing the right direction. Make sure it is hearing the right direction. Chapter 6. Acting before you feel ready. Readiness is one of the most misunderstood ideas in personal growth. Many people treat it as a requirement. They believe action should wait until confidence arrives. This belief quietly delays progress. Most meaningful change begins before readiness is felt. If you wait to feel ready, you often wait forever. The feeling of readiness is rare because it is not designed to come first. It comes after movement begins. Think about learning to walk. No child waits until they feel confident. They stand, they fall, they adjust. Confidence forms through repetition, not planning. The same pattern applies to adult life. People say they need more clarity. They say they need more motivation. They say they need the right moment. But clarity often comes from action. Motivation often follows progress. And the right moment is usually created, not discovered. This chapter is about understanding that readiness is a byproduct, not a starting point. Let us examine why people wait. Waiting feels safe. It feels responsible. It feels controlled. Action feels exposed. It invites feedback. It risks discomfort. The mind prefers safety over growth. So it creates convincing reasons to delay. I need more information. I should prepare longer. This is not the right time. These thoughts are not lies. They are partial truths used as shields. Preparation has value. Timing matters. But when preparation replaces action, growth stalls. Here is a key insight. The mind exaggerates risk before action, and minimizes risk after inaction. Before acting, it imagines failure. After not acting, it justifies the delay. This keeps the comfort zone intact. But comfort zones are designed to preserve the familiar, not to expand potential. Consider a real-world example. A person wants to change careers. They read articles. They watch videos. They plan endlessly. Years pass. Another person starts before they feel ready. They take a small course. They apply imperfectly. They learn in motion. One stays informed. The other progresses. The difference is not intelligence. It is tolerance for discomfort. Acting before you feel ready does not mean acting blindly. It means acting responsibly without emotional certainty. Emotional certainty is unreliable. It changes daily. Direction should not. This is why discipline matters more than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline carries action forward regardless of mood. Many people confuse fear with a warning sign. Sometimes fear is simply unfamiliarity. The body reacts to new situations with tension. The mind labels that tension as danger. But growth often feels the same as danger. At first. This is why the feeling of readiness is a poor guide. Readiness often arrives after evidence appears. Evidence appears after action. This creates a loop. Action produces evidence. Evidence builds confidence. Confidence supports further action. Waiting breaks this loop. Here is another important distinction. You do not need to feel confident to act. You need to feel committed. Commitment is a decision. Confidence is a reaction. Decisions can be made on quiet days. Reactions depend on circumstances. People who act before they feel ready trust their ability to respond, not their ability to predict. They do not assume they will succeed easily. They assume they will adapt. Adaptability is more valuable than certainty. Think about people you admire. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They moved with incomplete information. They learned publicly. They adjusted often. What looks like confidence from the outside often started as discomfort inside. This chapter also addresses perfectionism. Perfectionism disguises itself as high standards. In reality, it often hides fear of exposure. Waiting until something is perfect delays learning. Learning happens through feedback. Feedback requires action. An imperfect attempt teaches more than endless planning. Here is a practical approach. Lower the threshold for action. Do not ask, "Am I ready?" Ask, "What is the smallest step I can take without harm?" Small steps reduce emotional resistance. They create momentum. Momentum quiets doubt. Once momentum exists, readiness feels less important. Another common trap is comparison. People compare their beginning to someone else's middle. They feel unqualified. They feel behind. This comparison ignores time and context. Everyone who is skilled once acted while unprepared. They just did it earlier. You cannot skip the early phase. You can only delay it. Acting before you feel ready shortens the delay. This chapter is also about responsibility. When you act, you take ownership of outcomes. That can feel heavy. But ownership also brings freedom. You stop waiting for permission. You stop blaming circumstances. You begin shaping direction. This creates a subtle shift in identity. You move from observer to participant. Participation changes how reality responds to you. Opportunities appear more often because you are visible. Feedback arrives faster because you are engaged. Reality responds to movement. Here is a simple exercise. Think of one action you have been delaying. Something reasonable. Something within reach. Now remove the expectation of success. Replace it with one intention. I will learn. Learning removes pressure. Pressure creates paralysis. Once learning becomes the goal, action becomes lighter. You are no longer proving yourself. You are gathering information. This shift reduces fear. Fear shrinks when action is reframed as exploration. Over time, acting before you feel ready builds trust. Not trust in outcomes. Trust in yourself. You begin to see that you can handle feedback. You can recover from mistakes. You can adjust course. This self-trust is more stable than confidence. Confidence depends on results. Self-trust depends on resilience. This chapter had one purpose: to break the illusion that readiness comes first, and to show you that action is often the teacher. You do not need to feel ready to begin. You need to be willing to respond. Once you act, clarity follows. Once clarity follows, confidence grows. And once confidence grows, readiness no longer matters, because you are already moving. Chapter 7. Detaching from outcomes. While expecting success, most people think detachment means indifference. They believe that if you care less, you try less. That is not true. Detachment is not the absence of desire. It is the absence of desperation. You can expect success without clinging to a specific outcome. In fact, this balance creates the best results. This chapter is about learning how to hold direction without tension. Outcomes matter. Goals matter. But attachment often creates pressure that interferes with performance. When people grip outcomes too tightly, their thinking narrows, their body tenses, their decisions become reactive. They want something so badly that they stop responding clearly. This is how control is lost. Let us look at a familiar example. A person goes into an important conversation needing approval. They want a yes. They need validation. Their tone changes. Their posture tightens. They over-explain. The other person senses the need. The outcome suffers. Another person enters the same conversation grounded. They have a goal, but they are not attached to forcing it. They listen. They respond. They stay calm. The outcome improves. The difference is not desire. It is detachment. Detachment creates clarity. Expectation without attachment is a powerful position. Expectation says, I am moving toward something meaningful. Detachment says, I can handle whatever feedback arrives. This combination removes fear. Fear is fueled by imagined loss. When you detach, loss loses its power. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop defining yourself by a single result. Many people unknowingly tie their worth to outcomes. If it works, they feel valuable. If it fails, they feel diminished. This creates emotional volatility. Volatility disrupts consistency. Consistency is what produces success over time. Detachment stabilizes identity. Your identity becomes anchored in effort and direction, not in momentary results. Here is an important insight. You perform better when your nervous system feels safe. Attachment triggers threat responses. Detachment signals control. This is why athletes often perform best when they are focused on process, not on winning. Winning is the direction. Process is the control. When attention stays on process, outcomes improve naturally. This principle applies everywhere. In work, in relationships, in personal growth. Expect success, but focus on execution. Let us talk about timing. Many outcomes are delayed. Effort does not always produce immediate feedback. Attachment makes waiting painful. It turns silence into anxiety. Detachment allows patience. Patience does not mean passivity. It means staying steady without panic. People who succeed long-term develop patience with feedback cycles. They understand that some results arrive later. They trust consistency. This trust reduces emotional swings. Now consider failure. Attachment turns failure into identity. Detachment turns failure into data. Data is useful. Identity damage is not. When you detach, failure becomes information. What worked, what did not? What can be adjusted? This mindset keeps momentum alive. Many people quit, not because they fail, but because they interpret failure personally. Detachment protects momentum. Here is a practical example. An entrepreneur launches something new. Early response is slow. If they are attached, they panic. They change everything at once. They lose direction. If they are detached, they observe. They adjust one variable. They continue. Over time, results compound. Detachment allows refinement. Attachment demands immediate validation. Let us clarify something important. Detachment is not emotional coldness. It is emotional maturity. You still care. You still aim high. You simply refuse to let one moment define you. This chapter also addresses control. People attach to outcomes because they want control. Ironically, attachment reduces control. Control lives in action, not in results. Results are influenced by many variables. Action is yours. Detaching from outcomes returns attention to what you can influence. This is empowering. Here is a simple practice. Before starting an important task, state two things. I am committed to doing this well. I am open to learning from the result. This frames expectation and detachment together. Over time, this framing rewires response. You become less reactive, more adaptive, more consistent. Detachment also improves relationships. When you stop needing a specific response, you listen better. You speak more clearly. You respond instead of react. People feel this shift. Interaction becomes smoother. Now let us talk about inner pressure. Inner pressure drains energy. It creates urgency without direction. Detachment releases that pressure. When pressure drops, creativity rises. Solutions appear more easily. This is why some of your best ideas come when you stop forcing them. Detachment creates space. Space allows insight. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that expecting success does not require emotional attachment, and that detachment is not weakness. It is strength without tension. When you detach from outcomes, you stay steady. When you stay steady, you act consistently. When you act consistently, success becomes likely, not instantly. not perfectly, but reliably. In the next chapter, we will explore why many people quit just before results appear, and how to persist without pressure. For now, remember this: care deeply, act fully, release the grip. That balance changes everything. Chapter 8. Why most people quit right before results appear. Quitting rarely looks dramatic. It often looks reasonable. People do not usually say, "I am giving up." They say, "This is not working." They say, "Now is not the right time." They say, "Maybe later." Most quitting happens quietly, and it often happens right before results appear. This chapter explains why. Progress is rarely linear. It does not move in a straight line. It moves in waves. Effort is applied. Nothing seems to change. Then suddenly, something shifts. Most people quit in the space between effort and evidence. That space feels uncomfortable. It feels uncertain. It feels like wasted energy. The mind dislikes uncertainty. It wants proof. When proof is delayed, doubt grows. This is where most people stop. They mistake delay for failure. Let us look at a simple example. A person starts exercising. The first few weeks are hard. The body aches. The scale barely moves. They feel worse before they feel better. This is the danger zone. If they quit here, nothing changes. If they persist, strength appears. Energy increases. Results follow. The body was adapting before the results showed. The same principle applies to skills, habits, and life direction. Adaptation comes before visible reward. Most people are not prepared for this delay. They assume effort should feel encouraging. When it does not, they assume something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. The system is working. This chapter is about understanding invisible progress. Invisible progress is progress that happens beneath the surface. It includes learning, adjustment, internal change. These changes matter, but they are quiet. Because they are quiet, they are often ignored. The mind prefers dramatic feedback. It wants instant confirmation. It wants clear signals. When those signals do not appear, motivation drops. Here is an important insight. Results lag behind behavior. They always have. If results appeared instantly, learning would not be required. Growth would be shallow. Delay builds resilience. Resilience builds capacity. Capacity supports lasting success. But resilience is uncomfortable to build. This is why people quit early. Another reason people quit is emotional fatigue. When effort is made without visible reward, the mind begins to question purpose. Why am I doing this? Is this worth it? What if this never works? These questions are normal. The mistake is treating them as instructions instead of signals. They are signals of strain, not signals to stop. Most people never learn to separate emotion from direction. Emotion changes daily. Direction should not. Let us look at a real-world scenario. A person starts a new business or project. The early excitement fades. Routine replaces novelty. This phase feels dull. It feels heavy. This is when consistency matters most. Those who quit here tell themselves a story. They say they lost passion. They say they were not meant for this. Often neither is true. What they lost was novelty. What they lacked was patience. Success is built in ordinary days, not in moments of inspiration. Here is another reason people quit. They compare too early. They look at others who are further along. They feel behind. They feel inadequate. Comparison magnifies delay. It makes slow progress feel like failure. But comparison ignores timelines. You do not see the early struggle of others. You see the highlight. This distorts expectation. Most people quit because their expectation of timing is unrealistic. They expect progress to feel good quickly. They expect clarity to come early. In reality, clarity often arrives late. It arrives after repetition, after mistakes, after persistence. This chapter is also about identity. Many people begin with excitement, but without identity alignment. They are doing something, but they do not yet see themselves as someone who does it. When discomfort appears, identity is tested. If identity is weak, quitting feels like relief. Those who persist often do not feel stronger. They feel committed. Commitment carries people through uncertainty. Here is a powerful shift. Instead of asking, "Is this working?" ask, "Am I still learning?" Learning means progress is happening, even if results are delayed. If you are learning, quitting is premature. Another reason people quit early is emotional accounting. They track effort and reward too closely. I worked hard today. Why did nothing happen? This creates frustration. Growth does not pay daily. It pays in phases. Some days deposit effort. Other days withdraw results. If you stop depositing, the account never matures. This is why discipline matters. Discipline does not depend on feeling rewarded. It depends on commitment to direction. People who succeed long-term do not feel motivated all the time. They feel responsible. Responsibility sustains action. When motivation fades. Let us talk about feedback. Early feedback is often misleading. You may receive criticism before competence, silence before recognition, failure before improvement. If you treat early feedback as final judgment, you quit too soon. Feedback is part of calibration, not condemnation. This chapter also addresses fear of wasted time. People quit because they fear continuing something that might not work. Ironically, quitting guarantees no result. Continuing at least preserves possibility. Possibility is fragile. Once abandoned, it disappears. Here is a practical approach to persistence. Set checkpoints based on behavior, not outcome. For example, decide to practice for 30 days. Decide to show up consistently. Decide to learn from each attempt. Do not judge results until the checkpoint ends. This removes emotional decision-making. It protects momentum. Another helpful shift is this. Expect boredom. Expect doubt. Expect slow days. When these appear, you do not panic. You recognize them as part of the process. Normalization reduces quitting. People quit less when discomfort feels expected. This chapter is not about blind persistence. It is about informed persistence. If you are repeating the same mistake without learning, adjust. If you are avoiding feedback, re-engage. But do not quit simply because results are quiet. Quiet phases are often preparation phases. Roots grow underground before the tree appears. No one sees the roots, but without them nothing stands. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that quitting often happens at the worst possible time. Right before momentum builds. Right before clarity appears. The gap between effort and evidence is where most people stop. Those who continue through that gap separate themselves. They do not feel special. They feel patient. They do not see instant results. They trust the process. And when results finally appear, they look sudden to others. But they were not sudden at all. They were delayed, and delay is where most people quit. Now you know why. In the next chapter we will explore how to rewrite the inner voice that tells you to stop too soon. For now, remember this. Silence does not mean failure. Delay does not mean denial. Sometimes it simply means you are closer than you think. Chapter 9. Rewriting your inner voice. There is a voice you hear more than any other. It speaks before decisions. It comments during effort. It explains results after the fact. This voice feels like you, but it is often learned. Your inner voice is not born fully formed. It is built over time. It absorbs tone from authority. It borrows language from experience. It repeats what it hears most often, and once it settles in, it becomes automatic. Most people believe their inner voice tells the truth. They rarely question it. That is where control is lost. Your inner voice is not a narrator. It is a trainer. What it repeats, you practice. What you practice, you become skilled at. What you become skilled at shapes your life. This chapter is about changing that trainer. Let us start with an important realization. Your inner voice does not predict reality. It prepares you for it. If it expects failure, it prepares caution. If it expects rejection, it prepares withdrawal. If it expects difficulty, it prepares resistance. Preparation influences performance. Performance influences outcome. Outcome then seems to confirm the voice. This is how the loop forms. Consider a common example. A person thinks, "I am not good at speaking." That thought appears before they speak. Their body tightens. Their breathing shortens. Their tone becomes uncertain. The interaction suffers. Afterward, the voice says, "See, I told you." The voice feels accurate, but it caused the result it predicted. This is not self-awareness. It is self-programming. Most inner voices were never designed intentionally. They were shaped by repetition and emotion. A critical comment heard often becomes a habit. A single embarrassing moment replayed repeatedly becomes identity. The mind does not know the difference between past and present when a memory is replayed. Each replay strengthens the voice. This is why old experiences still influence current behavior. The inner voice does not live in time. It lives in patterns. This chapter is not about silencing the inner voice. Silence creates pressure. It is about rewriting it. Rewriting does not mean lying to yourself. It means updating language to reflect direction, instead of fear. Here is an important distinction. The inner voice often speaks in conclusions. Rewriting shifts it to observations. A conclusion sounds like this: "I always fail at this." An observation sounds like this: "This attempt did not work." The difference is subtle. The impact is enormous. Conclusions shut down effort. Observations invite adjustment. Your inner voice shapes how you interpret events. Two people experience the same setback. One inner voice says, "This proves I am not capable." The other says, "This shows me what needs improvement." Same event, different future. The voice decides which one you live in. Let us talk about tone. Inner voices often carry judgment, sarcasm, impatience. That tone affects motivation. People respond poorly to constant criticism, even when it comes from inside. If you spoke to a friend the way many people speak to themselves, the relationship would not last. Yet the mind hears it daily. Tone matters as much as content. A harsh inner voice creates resistance. A steady inner voice creates cooperation. This is not about being gentle all the time. It is about being constructive. Constructive language keeps action alive. Here is another key insight. Your inner voice learns from how you respond to it. If it criticizes and you freeze, it learns that criticism works. If it criticizes and you redirect, it adapts. The voice is not fixed. It is responsive. This is good news. You are not fighting a permanent enemy. You are retraining a habit. Let us look at how to do this in practice. First, you must notice the voice. Most people are identified with it. They think the voice is them. Start by creating distance. When a negative thought appears, do not argue with it. Do not obey it either. Label it. That is my inner voice speaking. This small step creates space. Space creates choice. Once space exists, rewriting becomes possible. Second, change the direction of the language. Do not replace negative thoughts with extreme positivity. The mind resists exaggeration. Replace them with neutral direction. Instead of saying, "I cannot do this," say, "I am learning how to do this." Instead of saying, "This is too hard," say, "This requires effort." These statements feel believable. Believable language is accepted. The goal is not inspiration. It is stability. Third, focus on frequency. A new inner voice does not win through intensity. It wins through repetition. You do not need to say the new language perfectly. You need to say it often. Each repetition weakens the old pattern. Each repetition strengthens the new one. This takes time, but it works. Now let us address resistance. When you begin rewriting your inner voice, it may push back. Old language will return. This does not mean failure. It means the habit is strong. Habits weaken through consistency, not force. If you notice the old voice returning, do not react emotionally. Simply redirect again. Redirection is training. Another important area is self-labeling. Many inner voices use labels. Lazy, bad at this, not creative, not confident. Labels freeze identity. Once labeled, behavior follows the label. Rewriting removes labels and replaces them with states. Instead of saying, I am not disciplined, say, my discipline is improving. Instead of saying, I am bad at this, say, this is not developed yet. States change. Labels do not. This shift restores flexibility. Flexibility restores growth. The inner voice also influences timing. A critical voice rushes or delays. It creates urgency or avoidance. A trained voice supports pacing. It says take the next step, not rush everything, not avoid everything. This balanced pacing reduces stress. Stress clouds judgment. Clarity improves results. Another powerful practice is narrating effort instead of outcome. Instead of focusing on whether something worked, focus on what you did. I showed up today. I practiced. I adjusted. This builds an identity around effort. Effort-based identity is resilient. Outcome-based identity is fragile. This chapter is also about patience with yourself. Rewriting the inner voice is not a one-time decision. It is ongoing attention. Some days it will be easier. Some days it will feel automatic. Both are part of the process. The inner voice is shaped by repetition. That means it can be reshaped the same way. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that the voice inside you is not fixed. It is trained, and you are the trainer now. When your inner voice becomes steady, action becomes easier. When action becomes easier, consistency increases. When consistency increases, results follow. Not because the world changed, but because your response to it did. In the next chapter, we will explore discipline over mood, and why waiting to feel right keeps many people stuck. For now, remember this: your inner voice is always speaking. Make sure it is speaking in your direction. Chapter 10. Living as if the result is already certain. Certainty changes behavior. Before results appear, it changes posture. It changes tone. It changes decisions. Most people wait for proof before they allow certainty. They want evidence first. They want reassurance. But certainty rarely comes that way. It comes from decision, not confirmation. Living as if the result is already certain does not mean ignoring effort. It means removing hesitation. Hesitation is costly. It drains energy. It fractures focus. It delays momentum. Certainty simplifies. When something feels certain, the mind stops debating. It stops negotiating. It starts executing. This chapter is about creating that internal certainty before the world reflects it back. Let us clarify something important. Certainty is not arrogance. It is not blind confidence. It is quiet alignment. Arrogance demands validation. Certainty does not. A person who is certain does not need to convince others. They simply move. This difference is subtle but powerful. Think about how people behave when they are sure of something small. When you are sure you will arrive somewhere, you do not panic halfway. You do not constantly question the route. You adjust calmly if needed. You trust the destination. This same mindset can be applied to larger goals. Most people do the opposite. They commit intellectually, but doubt emotionally. They say they want something, then behave as if it may not happen. This creates mixed signals. The mind struggles with mixed signals. It slows down. Living as if the result is certain removes that conflict. It aligns thought and action. Here is a key insight. Certainty affects behavior long before it affects outcomes. When you are certain, you show up differently. You prepare differently. You recover differently. Setbacks feel temporary, instead of threatening. This is why certainty often looks like confidence from the outside, but internally, it feels like calm. Calm creates consistency. Consistency produces results. Let us look at a real-world example. Two people are building the same skill. One practices occasionally. They skip sessions when they feel discouraged. They question whether it is worth continuing. The other practices as if improvement is inevitable. They show up on schedule. They adjust technique. They stay engaged. The second person is not more talented. They are more certain. That certainty removes debate. Debate wastes energy. Here is another important distinction. Living as if the result is certain does not mean expecting a specific timeline. Timeline attachment creates pressure. Pressure reintroduces doubt. Certainty focuses on direction, not speed. It says, this is happening as long as I continue. That mindset is stable. Many people lose certainty because they confuse delay with denial. Delay is normal. Denial is final. Certainty accepts delay without panic. It interprets quiet periods as part of the process. This keeps behavior consistent. Now let us talk about identity. When you live as if the result is certain, you begin to act like the person who has already succeeded. Not in appearance. In habits. You adopt the routines, the standards, the discipline. This identity shift happens before external recognition. External recognition follows identity alignment, not the other way around. Most people wait for permission to change identity. They wait for success to prove they are allowed. Certainty flips this order. You decide who you are becoming. Then you act accordingly. Reality responds to identity expressed through behavior. This chapter is also about reducing emotional noise. Doubt creates noise. Noise scatters attention. Certainty quiets the mind. A quiet mind makes better decisions. This does not mean doubt disappears completely. It means doubt loses authority. Doubt may still speak, but it no longer decides. This is important. You do not need to eliminate doubt to move forward. You need to stop obeying it. Certainty is obedience to direction. Here is a practical way to build certainty. Stop asking if something will work. Start asking how you will respond if it does not work yet. This shifts focus from outcome to adaptability. Adaptability supports certainty. When you trust your ability to respond, outcomes feel less threatening. Certainty grows. Another powerful practice is consistency without emotional negotiation. Decide your actions in advance. Do not renegotiate daily. For example, decide when you will practice, when you will work, when you will rest. Then follow through regardless of mood. Mood is temporary. Direction should be stable. This structure supports certainty. Over time, the mind learns that action is not optional. It stops debating. Debate drains certainty. Action reinforces it. This chapter also addresses fear of disappointment. Many people avoid certainty because they fear being wrong. They think uncertainty protects them. It does not. Uncertainty prolongs discomfort. Certainty does not guarantee success, but it guarantees movement. Movement is required for success. Here is an important reframe. Being wrong is not failure. Not deciding is stagnation. Certainty is a decision to move fully. Even if adjustments are required. Most successful outcomes are not straight lines. They are shaped through correction. Certainty does not resist correction. It welcomes it. Correction does not threaten certainty. It refines it. Let's talk about language. The way you speak to yourself reveals certainty or doubt. Listen for phrases like, maybe this will work. I hope this happens. We will see. These phrases keep the mind in waiting mode. Replace them with grounded language. I am working toward this. I am building this. I am committed to this. This language is calm, not dramatic. Drama signals uncertainty. Calm signals direction. Over time, language shapes posture. Posture shapes interaction. People respond differently to certainty. They trust it. They follow it. They reflect it back. Reality mirrors consistency. This chapter is not suggesting pretending outcomes are guaranteed. It is suggesting behaving as if persistence is non-negotiable. Persistence creates probability. Probability becomes results. Here is a final practice. Choose one goal you care about. Decide that you will continue regardless of short-term feedback. Not recklessly. Responsibly. Then remove the question of whether you will continue. That question is the source of doubt. Once removed, energy is freed. Energy moves into execution. Execution creates progress. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that certainty is not something you wait for. It is something you choose. When you live as if the result is already certain, you stop leaking energy into hesitation. You move with calm direction. You act with consistency. And over time, reality responds. Not because you hoped, but because you behaved as if continuation was inevitable. In the next chapter, we will explore eliminating the need to be understood, and why quiet progress often moves fastest. For now, remember this: certainty is not loud, it is steady, and steady movement changes everything. Chapter 11. Eliminating the need to be understood. The need to be understood is one of the quietest sources of delay. It rarely feels harmful. It feels reasonable. People want to explain themselves. They want clarity. They want reassurance that their choices make sense. But this need often slows progress more than any obstacle. This chapter is about releasing that need. Not because understanding is bad, but because dependence on it is limiting. Most people underestimate how much energy they spend trying to be understood. They explain decisions before acting. They justify changes before committing. They wait for agreement before moving forward. This creates friction. Friction drains momentum. Let us begin with a simple observation. Progress does not require consensus. Many meaningful decisions will confuse others at first. They may even concern them. That does not mean the decision is wrong. It means it is unfamiliar. Familiarity feels safe. Unfamiliarity triggers questions. Most people respond to questions by explaining. Explaining feels polite, but it often turns into permission-seeking. When you explain too early, you reopen decisions that were already made internally. This weakens resolve. Here is a common pattern. A person decides to change direction. A new habit, a new path, a new boundary. They share it immediately. Others question it, offer opinions, express doubt. The person begins defending the choice. Soon the energy that was meant for action is spent on explanation. Momentum fades. The change stalls. Nothing external stopped it. The need to be understood did. This chapter is not about secrecy. It is about timing. Some decisions need time to solidify before they are shared. Clarity grows through action, not through discussion. When you explain before acting, you are often explaining uncertainty. Others feel it. They respond with caution. This reinforces doubt. Here is a key insight. Understanding usually follows results, not the other way around. People understand outcomes more easily than intentions. They trust what they can see. Trying to be understood before results exist creates resistance. This is why quiet progress often moves faster. Silence protects focus. Focus protects consistency. Consistency creates results. Results create understanding. This sequence matters. Many people reverse it. They want understanding first, then permission, then action. This is slow. Let us talk about identity. The need to be understood is often tied to self-image. People want to be seen as reasonable, capable, good. When others misunderstand them, it feels threatening. But growth often involves temporary misunderstanding. When you change, your behavior no longer fits old expectations. Others may resist that, not because you are wrong, but because change disrupts familiarity. If you need to be understood, you may shrink back into old roles. Roles feel comfortable to others, but they may no longer fit you. Eliminating the need to be understood allows identity to update. You stop performing for acceptance. You start acting from alignment. This shift is subtle, but powerful. Here is another important distinction. Being misunderstood is not the same as being wrong. Many people confuse the two. They assume resistance means error. They assume confusion means failure. Often it simply means novelty. New paths look unclear from the outside. They are clearer from the inside. Trusting your internal clarity is a skill. It develops with practice. Let us look at a real-world example. Someone decides to build something new. A project, a habit, a lifestyle change. People around them ask questions. Why are you doing this? Is that realistic? What if it does not work? These questions may sound concerned, but they often reflect the questioner's own limits. If the person explains repeatedly, doubt spreads. If the person continues quietly, results speak later. This is not arrogance. It is discipline. Discipline protects direction. Another reason people want to be understood is emotional validation. They want to feel supported. Support matters. But relying on external validation makes progress fragile. Not everyone will understand your timing. Not everyone will share your urgency. If your action depends on agreement, it becomes conditional. Conditional action is inconsistent. Inconsistency weakens outcomes. Here is a powerful shift. Instead of seeking understanding, seek alignment. Alignment means your actions match your values. Your effort matches your direction. When alignment exists, misunderstanding is tolerable. You do not need everyone to see your vision. You need to execute it. This chapter also addresses over-explanation. Over-explanation is often a sign of insecurity. When you feel solid, you explain simply, or not at all. Clarity does not require length. Sometimes the most confident response is silence followed by action. This does not mean ignoring people. It means prioritizing progress. Let us talk about boundaries. Eliminating the need to be understood strengthens boundaries. You stop justifying decisions that are reasonable. You stop defending choices that are yours to make. Boundaries become cleaner. Clean boundaries reduce stress. Stress clouds judgment. Clear judgment supports consistency. Here is a practical practice. Before explaining a decision, pause. Ask one question. Is this explanation necessary for action? If the answer is no, wait. Let action create clarity. First. Another helpful shift is choosing who you explain yourself to. Not everyone needs access to your reasoning. Some people earn explanation through trust and shared values. Others do not. This is not exclusion. It is discernment. Discernment protects energy. Energy is required for execution. This chapter is also about releasing the burden of persuasion. You are not required to convince others of your vision. Persuasion takes time. Execution builds proof. Proof persuades without effort. Many people waste years explaining plans that never materialize. Those who move quietly often surprise others later. Surprise is not the goal. Progress is now. Let us address fear of judgment. The need to be understood is often fueled by fear of being judged unfairly. Judgment happens anyway. People judge with or without explanation.
Not any you cannot control interpretation.
You can control direction. Once you accept this, a weight lifts. You stop managing perceptions. You start managing actions. This simplifies life. Simple systems scale better than complex ones. Eliminating the need to be understood also sharpens listening. When you are not trying to explain yourself, you hear more clearly. You notice feedback without defensiveness. You adjust intelligently. This improves outcomes. Defensiveness blocks learning. Detachment enables it. This chapter does not suggest withdrawing from communication entirely. It suggests reducing unnecessary explanation. Share progress, not promises. Share results, not debates. Let curiosity replace justification. Curiosity keeps you open. Here is a final exercise. Think of one area where you feel misunderstood. Notice how much energy that feeling consumes. Now imagine continuing, without correcting it. Imagine letting results speak later. Feel the difference. Often relief appears. That relief is focus returning. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that the need to be understood is optional, and often expensive. When you release it, progress accelerates. You move quietly. You act consistently. You allow results to arrive. Understanding follows success more often than it precedes it. In the next chapter, we will explore how to build a reality that responds to you, and why consistency, not force, creates lasting change. For now, remember this: you do not need to be understood to move forward. You need to be aligned. Alignment creates results. Results create understanding. In that order. Chapter 12. Building a reality that responds to you. Reality does not respond to intention alone. It responds to consistency. Many people believe reality changes when they think differently. Thinking matters. But thinking without aligned behavior changes very little. Reality watches what you repeat. This chapter is about moving from wishing to shaping, from hoping to signaling, from effort without response to effort that creates momentum. Reality is not passive. It reacts, but it reacts slowly and selectively. It responds to what you do often, not to what you do once. Let us begin with a clear distinction. Reality does not respond to words. It responds to patterns. You can say you want change, but if your behavior stays the same, reality stays the same. Patterns are the language. Reality understands. This is why many people feel unheard by life. They believe they are asking clearly, but they are signaling inconsistency. Mixed signals produce weak responses. Consider how systems work. A thermostat responds to sustained temperature change, not to a brief fluctuation. Reality works the same way. Short bursts of effort do not create lasting feedback. Steady behavior does. This is where most people lose patience. They try something new. They wait. Nothing happens. They stop. Reality was not ignoring them. It was waiting for confirmation. Confirmation comes through repetition. Let us look at a real-world example. A person wants new opportunities at work. They speak up once, then retreat. Nothing changes. Another person shows up prepared every day. They contribute consistently. They follow through. Eventually, responsibility increases. Trust grows. Opportunity appears. Reality responded to the second pattern, not because it liked the person more, but because the signal was clear. This chapter is about becoming fluent in signaling. Signals are sent through behavior, tone, timing, follow through. Every repeated action teaches reality how to treat you. If you tolerate inconsistency, reality delivers unpredictability. If you tolerate disrespect, reality reflects it back. If you tolerate delay, reality slows down. This is not punishment. It is feedback. Reality mirrors standards. Standards are not declared. They are demonstrated. Many people say they value themselves, but their actions say otherwise. Reality believes action over language. If you cancel commitments to yourself, reality learns that you are flexible under pressure. If you persist despite discomfort, reality learns that you are reliable. Realitability attracts response. This applies internally as well. Your mind is part of reality. If you say you will act and do not, your mind stops trusting your direction. Doubt increases. Motivation drops. Consistency rebuilds trust. Trust accelerates movement. Here is a critical insight. You do not build a responsive reality by forcing outcomes. You build it by becoming predictable in effort. Predictable effort creates predictable feedback. This is why routines matter. Routines remove emotional negotiation. They make action automatic. Automatic action sends a strong signal. Reality responds to strong signals. Many people resist routine because it feels boring. But boredom is stability. Stability is power. Chaotic effort creates chaotic results. Let us talk about patience again. Reality often responds slowly at first. This is a test, not a test of worth. A test of consistency. If you stop too early, reality learns that your signals are temporary. It does not invest. Once you stay long enough, response increases. This is why momentum feels sudden. It is not sudden. It is delayed. Now let us address control. Building a reality that responds to you does not mean controlling everything. It means controlling yourself. Control over attention. Control over habits. Control over reaction. These are leverage points. Trying to control outcomes leads to frustration. Controlling inputs creates alignment. Alignment invites response. Here is a powerful reframe. Instead of asking, "Why is nothing happening?" ask, "What am I signaling consistently?" The answer is often uncomfortable, but it is useful. Reality is honest. If your actions are cautious, reality responds cautiously. If your actions are committed, reality responds with opportunities that require commitment. Reality does not give before it sees. It responds after patterns are proven. This chapter also addresses emotional signaling. Emotions influence behavior. Behavior influences feedback. If you act from desperation, reality reflects instability. If you act from calm persistence, reality reflects trust. Calm persistence is rare. That is why it works. Most people oscillate. They surge. They collapse. Reality does not respond well to oscillation. It responds to steadiness. Now let us talk about boundaries. Boundaries are signals. When you set clear boundaries and maintain them, reality adjusts, people adjust, circumstances adjust. When boundaries are inconsistent, confusion follows. Confusion slows response. Clear boundaries sharpen feedback. This applies to time as well. If you treat your time casually, reality fills it casually. If you protect it deliberately, reality adapts. Time is one of the strongest signals you send. What you consistently give time to grows. This is not philosophy. It is observable. Another important element is follow-through. Many people start well. Few finish consistently. Follow-through builds credibility. Credibility is not reputation. It is energetic alignment between intention and action. Reality trusts credibility. Once trust exists, response increases. Opportunities appear sooner. Support appears more naturally. Resistance decreases. Not because the world changed, but because your signal did. This chapter also clarifies something important. You do not need to work harder. You need to work cleaner. Cleaner means fewer promises, fewer directions, more follow-through. Scattered effort weakens signals. Focused effort amplifies them. Choose fewer actions, repeat them. Let repetition do the work. Here is a practical exercise. Choose one behavior you want reality to respond to. Consistency, confidence, reliability. Now choose one daily action that represents it. Make it small. Make it repeatable. Then protect it. Do not evaluate results for a while. Evaluate consistency. Reality responds after consistency becomes visible. Another powerful shift is removing emotional drama from action. Drama confuses signals. If you celebrate wildly one day and disappear the next, reality receives mixed information. Calm repetition is clearer. Think long-term. Reality responds to who you are becoming, not to who you claim to be. Becoming happens through repetition. This chapter is also about humility. You do not command reality. You collaborate with it. You adjust behavior. Reality adjusts feedback. This is a relationship. When you stop arguing with feedback and start learning from it, response improves. Resistance softens. Let us talk about trust again. Trust is built through reliability. Be reliable with yourself first. If you say you will act, act. If you say you will stop, stop. Self-trust stabilizes identity. Stable identity produces consistent behavior. Consistent behavior shapes reality. This is the chain. Many people try to skip steps. They want response without consistency. Results without reliability. Reality does not reward shortcuts. It rewards signals that hold. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that reality is not random. It is responsive. And that response is earned through consistency, not intensity. You do not need to force life. You need to signal clearly. When you do, reality listens. Not immediately. Not dramatically. But steadily. And once it responds, it continues. In the next chapter we will explore what to do when nothing seems to change, even though everything is working. For now, remember this. Reality responds to who you show up as repeatedly. Show up clearly. Show up steadily. And reality will meet you there. Chapter 13. When nothing changes, but everything is working. There is a phase in every meaningful effort that feels empty. Nothing seems to change. Nothing seems to respond. This phase is uncomfortable. It tests patience. It tests belief. Most people quit here. This chapter is about understanding that this phase often means progress is happening. It just has not surfaced yet. When nothing changes on the outside, change is often happening underneath. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Human attention is trained to notice movement. When movement is invisible, the mind assumes failure. But growth does not announce itself. It prepares quietly. Let us start with a simple image. When a seed is planted, nothing appears for a long time. The soil looks the same. The surface is still. But below the surface, roots are forming. If you dig up the seed to check progress, you kill it. This is exactly what many people do with their goals. They interrupt the process by constantly checking for proof. This chapter is about resisting that urge. Here is a key insight. Early effort often builds structure, not results. Structure supports later growth. If structure is weak, growth collapses. This applies to habits, skills, confidence, identity. When you show up daily, you are not always building visible results. You are building reliability. Reliability is invisible at first, but it changes how you respond under pressure. That change matters. Let us look at a real-world example. A person starts practicing a new skill. They feel awkward. They make mistakes. Weeks pass. They feel no improvement. Then one day something clicks. Movements feel smoother. Decisions feel faster. The improvement did not happen suddenly. It accumulated quietly. The mind integrated information over time. This is how learning works. Most people underestimate how long integration takes. They expect progress to feel linear. It rarely does. Progress often feels flat before it rises. This flat phase is not stagnation. It is consolidation. Consolidation is where changes stabilize. Without it, progress falls apart. This chapter is also about patience with feedback. Feedback does not always arrive as success. Sometimes it arrives as resistance. Resistance can be a sign that patterns are shifting. When you change behavior, old systems push back. That pushback feels like nothing is working. In reality, something is being challenged. Here is an important distinction. Silence is not the same as rejection. Silence often means things are aligning. Reality sometimes pauses before it responds. This pause is not punishment. It is adjustment. If you fill the pause with panic, you disrupt alignment. This is why emotional regulation matters. When nothing changes, emotion becomes loud. Doubt appears. Impatience grows. Urgency increases. These emotions demand action. But the action they demand is often quitting. This is the danger. The correct response in this phase is often consistency, not change. Consistency is boring, but it is powerful. Most people abandon consistency too soon. They change strategy prematurely. They chase novelty. They reset progress. Then they wonder why nothing ever sticks. Sticking is the skill. This chapter also addresses trust. Trust is not blind belief. It is informed patience. Informed patience understands that systems need time. Your body needs time to adapt. Your mind needs time to integrate. Your environment needs time to adjust. These processes cannot be rushed without consequence. Another reason this phase feels difficult is because external validation is absent. People often rely on validation to stay motivated. When validation disappears, effort feels lonely. This is where internal commitment must carry you. Commitment does not need applause. It needs direction. Direction remains even when nothing changes. Here is a powerful reframe. Instead of asking, "Why is nothing happening?" ask, "What is stabilizing?" Stabilization is progress. It means behavior is becoming reliable. It means identity is forming. Identity forms before results. Once identity is stable, results accelerate. Many people quit before identity locks in. They never become the person who naturally produces the result. They remain visitors. Visitors come and go. Residents stay. This chapter is about becoming a resident. Let us talk about emotional discipline again. When nothing changes, emotions want reassurance. They want signs, but reassurance often weakens. Resolve grows stronger when it is exercised without reward. This is not punishment. It is training. Training creates capacity. Capacity supports future success. This phase is where capacity is built. You may not feel stronger, but you are becoming more capable. This capability shows up later under pressure. People who persist through quiet phases respond better to challenges. They do not panic easily. They adjust calmly. This calm is not personality. It is training. Now let us talk about impatience. Impatience comes from focusing on outcome instead of process. Process is happening even when outcomes are not visible. If you shift attention back to process, anxiety decreases. Ask questions like this. Did I show up today? Did I act according to my values? Did I repeat the behavior I committed to? If the answer is yes, progress is happening. You are reinforcing a pattern. Patterns matter more than moments. Another important element is trust in self. When nothing changes, people often doubt themselves. They think they are doing it wrong. Sometimes they are, but often they are just early. Early feels wrong because feedback is missing. This is why mentors often say, "Keep going." They recognize the phase. They have been through it. Experience teaches patience. This chapter also addresses the urge to restart. Restarting feels productive. It feels like control. But restarting often resets momentum. Unless there is clear evidence of misdirection, restarting is usually avoidance. It avoids discomfort by creating novelty. Novelty feels good, but it delays mastery. Mastery requires staying. Staying is hard when nothing changes. That is why few people do it. Here is a practical anchor. Decide in advance how long you will continue before evaluating. Set a time frame. During that time, do not judge outcomes. Judge consistency. This protects you from emotional decisions. Another helpful practice is reducing input during this phase. Too much advice creates confusion. Confusion weakens commitment. Trust your process for a while. Let it work. This chapter had one purpose: to help you recognize the quiet phase, and to stay through it. When nothing changes, but everything is working, the temptation to quit is strongest. If you remain steady here, you separate yourself. You build capacity. Others never reach. Eventually something shifts. Results appear. Momentum increases. Clarity returns. From the outside it looks sudden. From the inside it feels earned. Because it was. In the next chapter we will explore emotional mastery and how to handle negative emotions without suppression. For now, remember this: stillness does not mean failure. Silence does not mean nothing is happening. Sometimes it means everything is aligning, and alignment always comes before results. Chapter 14. Mastering Emotional Control in Uncertain Moments. Uncertainty is not the problem. Loss of emotional control is. Most people believe uncertainty causes stress. In reality, stress comes from how emotions are handled inside uncertainty. This chapter is about learning to stay steady when outcomes are unclear, not by suppressing emotion, but by leading it. Emotional control is not emotional absence. It is emotional order. Uncertain moments appear in every meaningful pursuit. They show up when results are delayed, when feedback is mixed, when direction feels fragile. These moments reveal emotional habits. Some people rush, some freeze, some retreat. Few remain calm. Calm is not natural under uncertainty. It is trained. Let us begin with a critical understanding. Emotions are signals. They are not commands. Fear signals risk. Frustration signals effort without reward. Anxiety signals lack of clarity. Signals are useful. Commands are dangerous. Most people treat emotional signals as instructions. Fear says stop. Anxiety says avoid. Frustration says quit. This is how emotions gain control. Emotional mastery begins when you separate signal from action. You feel the emotion. You do not obey it. This separation creates space. Space creates choice. Choice restores control. Consider a real-world example. A person waits for important feedback. Days pass. Nothing arrives. Emotion begins to rise. Anxiety imagines rejection. Impatience demands action. Fear pushes toward distraction. If the person reacts emotionally, they send mixed signals. They follow up aggressively. They withdraw completely. They change plans prematurely. If the person stays emotionally steady, they maintain direction. They continue working. They prepare for either outcome. Same uncertainty. Different control. The difference is emotional leadership. Emotional leadership means you acknowledge what you feel without letting it steer. This is not denial. It is hierarchy. Reason leads. Emotion informs. Many people reverse this. Emotion leads. Reason follows. That order creates chaos. This chapter is also about timing. Emotions rise fastest when timing is unclear. The mind fills gaps with assumptions. Assumptions amplify emotion. This is why uncertainty feels heavy. The solution is not certainty. It is tolerance. Tolerance for ambiguity is a skill. It can be developed. Let us talk about the body. Emotions live in the body first. Before thought. Before logic. When uncertainty appears, the body reacts. Breathing becomes shallow. Muscles tighten. Heart rate increases. If this reaction goes unnoticed, emotion escalates. Control begins with physical awareness. Slow breathing slows emotion. Relaxed posture reduces urgency. These are not tricks. They are regulation tools. Regulation stabilizes emotion. Stabilized emotion allows clear thinking. Clear thinking supports good decisions. Many people try to think their way out of emotion. It rarely works. You must regulate first, then reason. Here is a simple grounding practice. When uncertainty spikes, slow your breathing. Inhale gently. Exhale longer than you inhale. This tells the nervous system that there is no immediate threat. Emotion softens. Now the mind can lead again. This chapter also addresses emotional storytelling. When uncertainty appears, the mind creates stories. What if this fails? What if I wasted time? What if I am wrong? These stories feel convincing. They are rarely accurate. They are attempts to resolve uncertainty by predicting outcomes. Prediction feels like control, but it often creates anxiety. Emotional control requires letting go of prediction. Prediction is not preparation. Preparation is skill building. Instead of predicting outcomes, prepare responses. Ask this instead. If this does not work, what will I do next? This question restores agency. Agency calms emotion. When you trust your ability to respond, uncertainty loses power. This is a key principle. Emotional control improves when response confidence increases. You do not need certainty about outcomes. You need trust in adaptability. Adaptability is emotional safety. This chapter also addresses rumination. Rumination is repeated emotional thinking, without action. It feels productive. It is not. Rumination drains energy. It amplifies emotion. Under uncertainty, rumination increases. The solution is structured focus. Choose one constructive action, even a small one. Action breaks emotional loops. Movement signals safety to the mind. The mind relaxes when progress exists. This does not mean frantic action. It means deliberate motion. Another important element is emotional labeling. When you label emotion accurately, it loses intensity. Instead of saying something is wrong, say, I feel uncertain. Instead of saying I am failing, say, I feel frustrated. This shifts from identity to state. States change. Identities feel permanent. This language matters. The inner voice calms when emotion is named without judgment. Judgment escalates emotion. Neutral observation reduces it. Let us talk about control again. Many people think emotional control means controlling outcomes. That is impossible. Emotional control means controlling response. Response is always available. This realization is empowering. You are never powerless emotionally. You always have response choice. Even when outcomes are unclear. Especially then. This chapter also explores emotional patience. Patience is emotional strength. It allows time to pass without panic. Patience does not mean passivity. It means steadiness. Steadiness is rare under uncertainty. That is why it creates advantage. People who master emotional control make fewer mistakes under pressure. They do not overcorrect. They do not abandon strategy too early. They allow processes to work. This patience compounds. Let us address fear of the unknown. Fear is strongest when imagination is unrestrained. Bound imagination with facts. Ask simple questions. What do I know for sure? What is assumed? What can I influence today? These questions ground emotion. They return focus to the present. The present is manageable. The future feels overwhelming because it is undefined. Stay present. This chapter also emphasizes emotional recovery. Even with practice, emotions will spike. Control is not perfection. It is recovery speed. How quickly do you return to center? Fast recovery prevents emotional spirals. Spirals create damage. Recovery protects momentum. You improve recovery through awareness and repetition. Each time you regulate emotion successfully, confidence increases. Confidence reduces future reactivity. This is how mastery forms. Mastery is not the absence of challenge. It is competence under challenge. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that uncertainty does not require emotional chaos, and that emotional control is a skill, not a personality trait. You do not need certainty to stay calm. You need perspective. You need trust in response. When you master emotional control in uncertain moments, You gain a quiet advantage. You wait when others rush. You adjust when others freeze. Reality responds to this stability. In the next chapter, we will explore strengthening the mind through daily practice, and how small disciplines create unshakable control. For now, remember this: uncertainty reveals emotional habits. Control rewrites them, and the person who leads their emotions leads their outcomes. Chapter 15. Creating instant alignment between thought and action. Misalignment is one of the greatest sources of frustration. You think one thing, you do another. You plan carefully, then hesitate. You know what matters, but delay action. This gap between thought and action drains energy. It creates self-doubt. It weakens trust in yourself. This chapter is about closing that gap. Alignment does not mean perfection. It means follow through. When thought and action move together, momentum appears. When they separate, progress slows. Most people live with constant internal debate. They think about what they should do. They argue with themselves. They postpone. This internal friction feels normal, but it is not necessary. Alignment is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained. Let us begin with a simple truth. The mind is fast, action is slower. Because of this, thoughts multiply while action waits. If you allow the mind unlimited time, it creates doubt. It imagines alternatives. It overanalyzes. This is how misalignment forms. Alignment improves when action follows thought quickly. Speed matters, not speed of results. Speed of response. When a clear thought appears, and action follows immediately, trust builds. Trust reduces hesitation next time. This creates a positive loop. Thought leads. Action follows. Trust strengthens. Over time, alignment becomes natural. Let us examine why misalignment happens. One reason is emotional interference. You think clearly, then emotion reacts. Fear interrupts. Comfort resists. Distraction pulls attention away. Emotion does not ask permission. It appears automatically. If emotion is not managed, it delays action. Another reason is overcommitment. Many people think too big, too often. They plan massive changes. They overwhelm themselves. When action feels too large, the body resists. Misalignment increases. Alignment improves when actions are small and specific. Specific actions reduce emotional resistance. Here is a key insight. Alignment is easier when decisions are made in advance. If you decide in the moment, emotion has influence. If you decide ahead of time, emotion has less power. This is why routines work. Routines remove negotiation. Negotiation is where alignment breaks. Let us look at a real-world example. A person decides they want to improve health. They think about it daily. They delay action. Every day becomes a decision. Decision fatigue sets in. Another person decides on a simple rule. They walk every morning. No debate, no negotiation. Thought and action align automatically. Results follow. Alignment often looks boring, but boring is stable. Stability supports consistency. Consistency produces results. Another major cause of misalignment is identity conflict. You think one way, but your identity still lives in the past. For example, you think, I want to be disciplined, but your identity says, I am spontaneous. This conflict creates hesitation. Action follows identity more than thought. To align thought and action, identity must update. Identity updates through repeated action, not through affirmation. Each aligned action sends a message. This is who I am now. Over time, the identity shifts. Action becomes easier. Here is another important distinction. Alignment does not require motivation. It requires clarity. Motivation fluctuates. Clarity stabilizes. When you are clear about what matters, action feels simpler. Unclear goals create friction. Clear goals create direction. Direction reduces hesitation. This chapter also addresses impulse. Some people think alignment means acting on every thought. That is not alignment. That is reactivity. Alignment means acting on chosen thoughts. Not every idea deserves action. Selectivity matters. Choose fewer priorities. Commit to them. Alignment strengthens when focus narrows. Let us talk about internal promises. Every time you think about doing something and do not act, trust weakens. The mind learns that thought does not lead to action. Over time, thoughts lose power. You feel unmotivated. In reality, trust has eroded. Rebuilding trust starts with small follow-through. Make small promises. Keep them. Small actions rebuild credibility. Credibility restores alignment. Here is a simple practice. When a useful thought appears, act within 5 seconds. This prevents overthinking. The 5-second window is critical. After that, emotion interferes. This does not apply to every decision. Only to clear, low-risk actions. Send the message. Stand up. Start the task. Speed protects alignment. Another helpful practice is externalizing action. Write the action down. Set a reminder. Prepare tools in advance. These steps reduce friction. Less friction means less hesitation. Hesitation breaks alignment. This chapter also explores the role of environment. Environment shapes behavior. If your environment encourages distraction, alignment suffers. If it supports action, alignment improves. Remove friction from desired actions. Add friction to distractions. Simple changes matter. Place tools where you can see them. Reduce access to time wasters. Alignment improves when action is easy. Now let us address fear of commitment. Some people hesitate because action feels final. They fear locking themselves in. This fear keeps them in planning mode. But action is rarely final. Most actions are adjustable. Waiting creates rigidity. Action creates flexibility. This is a paradox. Movement allows correction. Stillness does not. Alignment accepts imperfection. It values motion over certainty. Here is another important shift. Stop thinking in terms of finishing. Think in terms of starting. Finishing feels heavy. Starting feels manageable. Alignment improves when the focus is on beginning. Begin often, end later. This chapter also addresses self-respect. When thought and action align, self-respect grows. You begin to trust yourself. That trust creates calm. Calm reduces internal noise. Noise causes misalignment. Alignment simplifies life. You stop arguing with yourself. You move. Now let us talk about emotional aftercare. After you act, acknowledge it. Notice the alignment. This reinforces the pattern. The mind learns that action feels good. Positive reinforcement matters. Do not dismiss small actions. Small actions are training. Training builds alignment capacity. Over time, alignment becomes automatic. You think less, you act more. Not recklessly. Intentionally. This chapter is also about forgiveness. You will misalign sometimes. You will delay. You will hesitate. Do not punish yourself. Punishment increases emotional resistance. Return to alignment gently. The goal is not perfection. It is reduction of delay. Shorter gaps. Quicker response. That is progress. Here is a final practice. Choose one area where you overthink. Decide one small daily action. Commit to acting without debate. Track consistency, not outcome. After a few weeks, notice the shift. Thoughts feel clearer. Action feels lighter. Trust grows. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that alignment is not about force. It is about speed, clarity, and trust. When thought and action align quickly, momentum builds. Momentum reduces doubt. Reduced doubt improves alignment. This cycle strengthens over time. You stop living in your head. You start living in motion. And motion is where results are created. In the next chapter, we will explore strengthening the mind through daily practice, and how small disciplines create lasting control. For now, remember this: alignment is a habit. Practice it, and the distance between who you think you are and how you act will disappear. Chapter 16. Becoming the person reality must obey. Reality does not obey wishes. It obeys identity. Not the identity you talk about, the identity you live. This chapter brings everything together. It is not about domination. It is about coherence. When who you are becomes consistent, reality responds. Most people try to change reality from the outside. They push harder. They demand more. They force outcomes. This rarely works for long. Reality does not yield to pressure. It yields to alignment. Becoming the person reality must obey means becoming predictable in the right way. Predictable in values. Predictable in effort. Predictable in response. This kind of predictability is powerful. Let us begin with a fundamental truth. Reality does not respond to intensity. It responds to stability. Anyone can act intensely for a short time. Few can act steadily over time. Steadiness signals reliability. Reliability attracts opportunity. Opportunity responds to those who can handle it. This is how reality decides. It does not choose based on desire. It chooses based on demonstrated capacity. Capacity is built quietly, through habits, through discipline, through repeated follow-through. This is why some people seem lucky. They are not lucky. They are consistent. Consistency compounds. Let us look at how identity forms. Identity is not what you believe about yourself. It is what you do without debate. If you act even when tired, you become disciplined. If you speak even when uncertain, you become confident. If you persist even when bored, you become reliable. Identity is behavior repeated. Once identity is stable, reality adjusts. People trust you more. Systems respond faster. Resistance decreases, not because you demand it, but because your presence carries weight. Weight comes from congruence. Congruence means your words, actions, and standards match. Most people live fragmented. They say one thing, they do another. They tolerate inconsistency. Reality reflects that fragmentation. Fragmented effort produces fragmented results. This chapter is about integration. Integration means who you think you are, and how you act become the same. When this happens, friction drops. Life becomes simpler, not easier, clearer. Clarity improves decision-making. Decision-making improves outcomes. Let us talk about authority. Authority is often misunderstood. It is not control over others. It is control over self. A person who controls their reactions carries authority. A person who controls their time carries authority. A person who controls their standards carries authority. Reality respects authority. When you are emotionally reactive, reality feels chaotic. When you are emotionally steady, reality becomes manageable. This is not mysticism. It is feedback. People respond differently to someone who is grounded. Opportunities flow differently. Systems trust consistency. This is why self-control is the foundation. Without it, nothing holds. Becoming the person reality must obey also means removing internal contradictions. Many people want growth, but avoid discomfort. They want change, but protect routine. These contradictions weaken signals. Reality receives mixed information. Mixed information produces delay. Clarity requires choosing. Choose growth over comfort. Choose consistency over intensity. Choose direction over distraction. Once chosen, stop negotiating. Negotiation weakens identity. Negotiation weakens identity. Negotiation weakens identity. Reality does not obey ego. It obeys discipline. Ego demands recognition. Discipline builds quietly. People who chase recognition often lose focus. People who focus on execution Gain momentum. Momentum attracts recognition naturally. This order matters. Another key principle is patience with power. When identity begins to solidify, results may increase. This is a test. Some people rush. They overextend. They abandon fundamentals. Reality responds by pulling back. Others stay grounded. They maintain standards. They protect routines. Reality responds by expanding. Power must be carried calmly. Calm is a signal of control. Control earns trust. Trust increases opportunity. This is the upward cycle. Becoming the person reality must obey also means accepting responsibility fully. No excuses. No blame. Responsibility is not guilt. It is ownership. Ownership creates agency. Agency creates confidence. Confidence stabilizes action. Stable action shapes reality. When you stop blaming conditions, you stop waiting. Waiting hands power away. Ownership takes it back. This chapter is also about standards. Standards define behavior. When motivation fades. If your standards are low, reality meets you there. If your standards are high, but inconsistent, reality waits. If your standards are high and consistent, reality adjusts. Standards are enforced through repetition, not through intention. Ask yourself this: what do I tolerate consistently? That answer tells you what reality will deliver. If you tolerate delay, delay appears. If you tolerate disrespect, disrespect appears. If you tolerate inconsistency, instability appears. Tolerance teaches reality how to treat you. Change tolerance. Reality follows. Let us talk about quiet confidence. Quiet confidence is not loud. It does not announce itself. It moves. It shows up. It finishes. It adapts. Reality responds to those who finish. Starting is common. Finishing is rare. Finish small things, then larger ones. Completion builds authority. Authority changes how reality responds. This chapter also addresses simplicity. Complex lives create weak signals. Simple systems create strong ones. Do fewer things. Do them well. Repeat them. Reality responds to clarity. Clarity is magnetic. When your life becomes clear, opportunities align. Not because you attract them magically, but because you are ready to receive them. Readiness is invisible until tested. Reality tests quietly. It offers small chances, small challenges, small responsibilities. How you respond determines what comes next. Most people ignore small tests. They want big moments. Reality promotes those who respect small ones. This is how trust is built. Trust scales. Now let us address inevitability. When identity is stable, outcomes feel inevitable. Not guaranteed, but earned. You know that if you continue, progress will occur. This certainty is calm. It does not rush. It does not beg. It moves. This is the state where reality feels responsive. Not because the world changed, but because you did. This chapter is not about controlling life. It is about becoming someone life can rely on. When life can rely on you, it responds. This is the paradox. The less you try to force reality, the more it aligns. The more you focus on becoming consistent, the more outcomes follow. Here is a final integration practice. Ask yourself 3 questions. What standards do I live by daily? What behaviors do I repeat, even when tired? What do I do without needing motivation? These answers define your identity. Identity defines response. If you want a different response from reality, become someone who signals differently. Not tomorrow, today. One action. Repeated. This chapter had one purpose: to show you that reality does not obey desire. It obeys consistency embodied as identity. When thought, action, emotion, and standard align, reality has no confusion. It responds. You do not need to demand. You do not need to rush. You need to become steady. Once you do, reality adjusts around you. Not instantly, not dramatically, but reliably, and reliability is the highest form of power. This is the final truth. You do not change reality by fighting it. You change it by becoming someone it must respond to. That is mastery. Conclusion. The quiet power you now carry. You have reached the end of this book, but what matters most begins now. Nothing in these chapters asked you to escape reality. Nothing asked you to deny facts. Nothing asked you to pretend. You were asked to see differently, to respond differently, to live deliberately. Reality was never the enemy. It was never the authority either. It was always a mirror. Throughout this book, you learned one central truth. Reality responds to consistency, not intention. To identity, not desire. To action, not explanation. You learned that most limits are learned, that silent rules shape behavior, that permission is something you give yourself. You learned how the mind accepts what it is fed, why readiness comes after action, why detachment creates clarity. You learned why most people quit too soon, how the inner voice is trained, not fixed, how certainty changes behavior before results appear. You learned that being understood is optional, that reality responds to patterns, that stillness often means progress. You learned how to stay emotionally steady in uncertainty, how to align thought with action, and how identity becomes authority. None of these ideas require perfection. They require repetition. This is the quiet power you now carry. The power to choose response. The power to repeat what strengthens you. The power to stay when others leave. You do not need to announce change. You do not need to convince anyone. You do not need immediate proof. You need alignment. Alignment between what you think, what you do, and what you tolerate. When alignment holds, reality adjusts, not suddenly, not loudly, but consistently. From this point forward, the question is not whether these ideas work. They work when applied. The real question is simpler. What will you repeat? What will you do when motivation fades? What will you maintain when no one is watching? What will you choose when nothing seems to change? Those choices define who you become, and who you become defines what reality gives back. You are not meant to fight the world. You are meant to outgrow old reactions. You are not meant to wait for certainty. You are meant to build it through action. You are not meant to control everything. You are meant to control yourself. When you do, reality listens, quietly, patiently, reliably. There is no finish line here. Only continuation. One decision, one action, one standard. Repeated. That is how change lasts. That is how reality responds. That is how power is built. Now close this book, and begin living as the person you already know you can be. Reality will follow.